Picture the Colosseum. The roar of 50,000 spectators deafens the air, a tidal wave of sound crashing down on the sun-baked sand of the arena. Below, two figures circle each other, muscles coiled, weapons gleaming. This is the image we all know, the brutal ballet of the gladiator, a life bought cheap and spent for the crowd's fleeting pleasure. We've been told they were slaves, condemned criminals, human sacrifices thrown to the lions. But what if I told you that's only a fraction of the story? What if the man with the trident and net was not just a slave, but a multi-million-dollar asset? An investment more valuable than a countryside villa or a fleet of merchant ships. The brutal truth of the arena wasn't just about death, it was about money. A staggering amount of it. So, how much did a gladiator actually cost? The answer will change everything you think you know about ancient Rome. To understand the price tag on a human life, we first have to dismantle a myth. The idea that every gladiator fight ended in death is a Hollywood fantasy. Think about it from a purely business perspective. You are a lanista, a gladiator owner and trainer. You've spent years and a small fortune scouting, acquiring, feeding, housing, and training a promising fighter. He's your star athlete, your prized possession. Would you really let another man kill him for a bit of afternoon entertainment? Absolutely not. Historical evidence suggests that only about 1 in 10 fights actually ended in death, especially during the peak of the empire. Most fights ended when one combatant was wounded or surrendered. The crowd might roar for death, but the final decision often rested with the editor, the sponsor of the games, who would have to pay an exorbitant fee to the owner if the gladiator was killed. It was simply bad business. So if they weren't just disposable pawns, what were they? They were elite athletes, the rock stars of their day. Children played with gladiator action figures made of clay. Their images were on mosaics and oil lamps. Graffiti on the walls of Pompeii celebrated their victories and their romantic conquests. They were brands, and a strong brand commands a high price. This brings us to the gladiator market itself, a complex and sophisticated system. It wasn't like buying cattle. It was more like the modern transfer market for a world-class football player. Gladiators were categorized by their fighting style and experience level. You had the Murmillo with his large shield and sword, the swift Retiarius with his net and trident, the heavily armored Secutor, and many more. Each had its own training regimen, its own tactical advantages, and its own market value. But here's the crucial turning point in understanding their cost. Not all gladiators were created equal, and not all were slaves. Many were volunteers, known as octorati. These were free men, often former soldiers, debt-ridden aristocrats, or thrill-seekers, who signed a contract with a lanista. They swore a sacred oath to be burned, chained, beaten, and killed by the sword, giving up their civil rights for a set period in exchange for a signing bonus and the chance at fame and fortune. This completely changes the dynamic. A volunteer, a professional who chose this life, had inherent value. They had agency. They weren't just property, they were contractors. Their presence in the market immediately drove up the price and prestige of the top fighters. You weren't just buying a body, you were investing in a career. So let's talk numbers. It's difficult to give exact figures in modern currency, but we can use relative values from Roman sources to get a stunning picture. A fresh recruit, a novitius, completely untrained, might be acquired for around 2,000 sesterces. To put that in perspective, a Roman legionary, a professional soldier, earned about 900 sesterces a year. So, even the most basic, entry-level gladiator was worth more than 2 years of a soldier's salary. And that was just the starting bid. After a year of specialized training, food, and medical care at a ludus, a gladiator school, his value would skyrocket. A trained, but unproven, gladiator could easily be worth 15,000 sesterces. This is where the real business begins. Now you understand why the lanista was so protective of his assets. Losing a trained gladiator wasn't just a sporting loss, it was a devastating financial blow. And we haven't even gotten to the superstars. A proven winner, a veteran of several fights with a public following, was in a league of his own. We have records of gladiators being rented out for a single event for tens of thousands of sesterces. But if that gladiator was killed, the promoter had to pay the lanista his full market value as compensation. This penalty, called the damnatio, could be astronomical. We have inscriptions that mention figures as high as 50,000 or even 100,000 sesterces for a top-tier fighter. Think about that. 100,000 sesterces. At a time when a comfortable house in Pompeii might cost around the same, and a luxury villa in the countryside could be bought for 500,000 sesterces. A single-star gladiator could be worth 1/5 of a millionaire's country estate. But there's an even more mind-boggling level to this. The true superstars, the champions of champions, were virtually priceless. They weren't just sold, they were traded like national treasures. Some emperors even had their own imperial troops of gladiators. Emperor Nero was said to have paid millions of sesterces to assemble his personal team. These men were so valuable that they were often spared death even when they clearly lost, simply because their owner, or the state itself, couldn't afford to lose the asset. Some gladiators became so famous and wealthy from their prize money that they were able to buy their freedom and retire. A few even became trainers themselves, perpetuating the cycle. The gladiator flamma, for example, was awarded the rudis, the wooden sword symbolizing freedom, for separate times. He refused it each time to continue his fighting career, ultimately dying in the arena at age 30 after 34 fights. He wasn't a slave trapped in a system. He was a professional who loved his job, and he was a very, very rich man. This economic reality paints a completely different picture of the arena. It wasn't a slaughterhouse, it was a stage for a high-stakes financial game. The lanista was a team owner and a broker. The editor was a promoter. The gladiators were the star players. The crowd's roar wasn't just for blood. It was for the spectacle they knew was costing a fortune. Every parry, every thrust, every near miss was amplified by the immense value of the men fighting. When you saw two Primus Paulus gladiators, the top-ranked champions, facing off, you weren't just watching a fight. You were watching the equivalent of two mansions trying to destroy each other. This is why some matches were staged, with predetermined outcomes, to protect the investments. It was the ancient Roman version of professional wrestling, a blend of legitimate sport and pure, money-driven entertainment. So, the next time you see a movie about gladiators, look past the swords and the sandals. See the contracts, the balance sheets, the investment portfolios. The man bleeding on the sand wasn't just a victim. He was a commodity, an entertainer, and potentially a millionaire. He was part of a ruthless, sophisticated, and incredibly lucrative industry built on the knife's edge between life and death. The greatest spectacle in Rome wasn't just the fight itself. It was the invisible, colossal river of money that flowed beneath the arena floor, a river that made men into legends and turned blood into gold. The true cost of a gladiator wasn't just measured in sesterces, but in the creation of a system that turned human beings into the ultimate luxury goods. They were the living embodiment of wealth, power, and the brutal entertainment that defined an empire. Thank you so much for watching. If this changed how you see ancient Rome, hit that like button and subscribe for more hidden histories. Now I have a question for you. Knowing their value, do you see gladiators more as exploited slaves or as high-paid professional athletes? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.